The 6 Buddhist habits that keep your mind sharp in old age. What if everything you believe about aging is wrong? They told you it's normal to forget. That misplacing your keys, losing words mid-sentence, or blanking on familiar names is just part of getting older. They said it with a soft smile, comforting, resigned, like there's nothing you can do. But what if that story is a lie? What if memory loss isn't a sentence written by time, but a habit sculpted by inattention? What if your brain, like your body, was never meant to fade, but to be fed, challenged, and awakened? The truth is, our minds don't break. They rust. And what rusts can be polished. What withers from neglect can bloom again under care. Today, I want to tell you a story, not of decline, but of reclamation. Of a woman who refused to let forgetfulness become her identity. Linda Miller was just like anyone else, sharp, capable, independent, until one moment shattered her illusion of control. But instead of surrendering to fear, she chose to fight back. With 6 habits rooted in ancient Buddhist wisdom and modern neuroscience, Linda rebuilt not only her memory, but her relationship with life itself. And here's the part they never told you. You can do. Stay with me, because this isn't a video about aging. It's a guide to remembering who you are. It didn't happen all at once. For years, Linda Miller lived with a quiet confidence. She remembered birthdays, balanced her finances, and beat anyone at crossword puzzles before finishing her morning coffee. Her memory had always been her strength, until, one day, it wasn't. At first, it was small. Misplaced glasses. Forgotten errands. Names that hovered on the tip of her tongue, only to vanish into thin air. She brushed it off. Who doesn't forget now and then? She was getting older, sure, but nothing alarming. Until the grocery store. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind of day that feels like a memory even as it's unfolding. She walked through the sliding glass doors, greeted by the scent of baked bread and the hum of fluorescent lights. Reaching for a shopping cart, something strange happened. She stopped. Her breath hitched. Her heart pounded. She stood still in the middle of the entrance, staring at the shelves stretching endlessly in every direction. People passed by. Some smiled. Some didn't notice her at all. And in that moment, she realized. She had no idea why she was there. Milk? Bread? Eggs? Nothing came. The more she searched her mind, the foggier it became. Panic pressed against her chest like a rising tide. Her hands trembled on the cart handle. Minutes passed, or maybe just seconds. Either way, she felt like she was drowning in the silence of her own thoughts. She whispered to herself, hoping to anchor something. Anything. But all she felt was the sting of tears she refused to let fall. She left the cart behind. Fumbled for her keys. Drove home in silence. That night, sitting in her armchair, the room dimly lit by a single lamp, Linda stared out the window. Outside, the world moved on. Cars passed, leaves rustled. But inside her, something had shifted. She thought of all the moments she had written off as stress, distraction, age. But this wasn't forgetfulness. It was erasure. What frightened her most wasn't what she forgot. It was what she might forget next. A birthday. A promise. A person. Would there come a day she wouldn't remember her granddaughter's laugh? Or the sound of her husband's voice? That thought cut deeper than any diagnosis ever could. But beneath the fear, something stirred. A quiet resolve. She had 2 choices. Let this slow unraveling define her. Or fight to remember, to truly remember, not just facts, but her essence, her clarity, her presence. As the Buddha once said, you, yourself, as much as anyone in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. And so, she began, not with grand plans, but with small sacred choices. Choices rooted in ancient teachings and supported by modern science. This wasn't about resisting age. It was about reclaiming awareness. And that night, with shadows stretching across the floor, Linda made a vow, not to memory, but to mindfulness. Because the mind, like a candle, can flicker in the wind, but it can also be protected, remembered. Habit 1. Grounding, walking barefoot, returning to the present. The first step Linda took on her journey wasn't in her mind. It was beneath her feet. It began one quiet morning. She stood at the edge of her backyard, dew still clinging to the blades of grass. The world was hushed, as if waiting for her to decide. She slipped off her shoes and pressed her soles into the damp earth. It felt strange at first. Exposed. Almost primitive. The coolness sent a jolt through her body, and every pebble reminded her how far she'd strayed from nature. But she stayed there, still and barefoot, breathing in the morning air. This was grounding, an ancient practice known in Buddhist teachings as a return to earth, a rebalancing of the self through direct contact with the world that holds us. In modern terms, it's called earthing. But in essence, it's about remembering. The Buddha once walked barefoot across forests, fields, and dusty roads, not for pain or poverty, but for presence. Each step was a meditation, a declaration. I'm here. I am awake. Linda didn't know all the science at first. She only knew that something within her began to shift. The more she walked barefoot, the more she noticed, really noticed, the texture of the soil, the whisper of wind through leaves, the bird's song unraveling the morning like thread from the sun. Anxiety, which once clung to her like fog, began to lift. Thoughts that used to race now slowed into rhythm. She wasn't doing anything really, just being. And that, it turns out, was everything. Later, she would learn that grounding has measurable effects. It reduces inflammation, improves sleep, balances cortisol, and supports brain clarity by neutralizing oxidative stress. But for Linda, the transformation wasn't in a study. It was in a single moment. One misty dawn, standing barefoot in the garden, the earth cool beneath her, she closed her eyes and whispered, "I'm here. I am present. I am alive." And for the first time in years, she meant it. Grounding became more than a habit. It became a ritual, a return to silence, to self, to now, because clarity had never left her. It had only been waiting for her feet to touch the ground. Habit 2. The golden tonic, a cup of clarity, a ritual of presence. For most of her life, Linda thought of food the way most of us do, as fuel, convenience, a routine necessity. But as her journey unfolded, she began to see it differently. It started with a question from a holistic doctor. What if your kitchen held more medicine than your cabinet? The words lingered with her. Days later, she was handed a small cup of something warm and golden. Its aroma was earthy, rich, unfamiliar, like a forgotten memory resurfacing. The doctor called it the golden tonic, a blend of ancient ingredients used for centuries in Buddhist and Ayurvedic traditions. She sipped it cautiously. Turmeric kissed her tongue with warmth. Coconut oil coated her throat with silk. Black pepper sparked gently at the back. Cacao added a depth that felt emotional. And cinnamon, sweet, grounding, tied it all together. In that moment, Linda didn't just drink a tonic. She received it, like a blessing, like a whisper from her body. Thank you for remembering me. Buddhism teaches us, food is not merely sustenance. It is an offering to the temple of the body and the clarity of the mind. Modern science agrees. Turmeric, rich in curcumin, protects against cognitive decline. Coconut oil fuels the brain with clean, stable energy. Cacao boosts blood flow, enhancing mood and memory. And cinnamon steadies the mind by steadying the body. But beyond the ingredients, it was the ritual that changed Linda. Each morning she made the tonic slowly, with intention. Stirring the pot as the sun peeked over the horizon, she would whisper, "May this nourish my body and mind. May I remain aware, grounded and whole." Some mornings were still foggy. Not every sip erased her struggles. But gradually, the fog began to thin. She felt more present in conversations, more grounded in her body, more connected to her life. And then one ordinary afternoon, it happened. She realized she hadn't misplaced her keys in over a week, hadn't forgotten a name, a date, or why she entered a room. It was a small moment, but to Linda, it felt like a revolution, because mindful eating was no longer about the food. It was about choosing each day to care, to wake up, to heal. The mind is not fed only by facts. It is fed by awareness, by intention, by love. And with each golden cup, Linda chose all three. Habit 3. Music, the soundtrack of memory and the soul. Sometimes the mind forgets, but the heart remembers, in song. It was a quiet afternoon when Linda's doctor asked her a question that seemed almost too simple. "Have you tried listening to music from your youth?" She hadn't. Not intentionally. Not mindfully. Music had become background noise in her life. Soft radio hums in waiting rooms, commercials between television breaks. But something about that question stayed with her. So that evening, as the sun dipped below the rooftops, she pulled out an old record player. Dusty, forgotten, but intact. She placed a vinyl gently onto the turntable. And as the needle dropped, magic rose. The first few notes crackled like embers from a long-extinguished fire. Then came the melody, a song she hadn't heard in decades. One she used to hum while brushing her hair before school. One that echoed from the car stereo on summer nights as she and her friends dreamed about life. And suddenly she was there. 17 again. The scent of jasmine in the air. Laughter in the backyard. The world unfolding not as it is, but as it was. Her eyes welled, not from sadness, but from remembrance. From the strange joy of finding a part of herself she thought time had erased. The Buddha taught that sound is not merely vibration. It is a thread, connecting us to the present, and often, to what we thought was lost. Monks have long used chants, bells, and mantras not just to focus the mind, but to heal the soul. And now, neuroscience confirms it. Music reactivates memory centers, rekindles emotion, and in some cases, helps people with dementia recognize loved ones once again. For Linda, it became a new ritual. She curated a playlist, a time capsule in sound. The song from her wedding. The lullaby she once sang to her children. The road trip anthem from the summer she and her husband drove across the country, hand in hand. Some days, she played gentle instrumental pieces while making tea. Other days, she danced, alone, free, laughing, letting the rhythm move not just her body, but her spirit. But the most profound moments weren't just in remembering. They were in sharing. One evening, her granddaughter Emily curled up beside her, headphones on. They listened to a song from the 60s. Emily giggled, "You dance to this?" Linda smiled. I did. In the rain. With bare feet and no regrets. That night, music didn't just revive memory. It built a bridge between generations, between eras, between heartbeats. And in that soft glow of shared laughter and melody, Linda realized something. Memory isn't just about retention. It's about resonance. It's about feeling who you've been and knowing that version of you still lives inside. And so, every song became a doorway. Not to the past, but to presence, to wholeness, to soul. Habit 4. Movement, awakening the body to awaken the mind. For a long time, Linda believed what most of us are taught to accept. That aging means slowing down. That fatigue is normal. That stiffness, fog, and forgetfulness are just part of the deal. But what if they're not signs of age, only signs of disconnection? It was her granddaughter Emily who gently challenged that belief. "Let's go for a walk, Grandma," she said one afternoon, her small hand reaching for Linda's. Linda hesitated. The sidewalk looked long. Her legs felt heavy. Even standing felt like an effort. But love moves us. So she stepped forward. The first few walks were more resistance than relief. Her knees ached. Her breath was short. But something kept her going. The rhythm of Emily's voice, the sound of birds overhead, the way the light filtered through the trees like golden threads. And then, slowly, something changed. Her body, once reluctant, began to respond. Her steps became steadier. Her breath deepened. And her thoughts, those once scattered and sluggish, began to settle like leaves drifting to still water. She started to feel again, not just physically, emotionally, spiritually. As she moved through her neighborhood, she began to recognize familiar faces again. Remember names she thought were lost. Strike up conversations with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. The Buddha once said, "To keep the body in good health is a duty, otherwise we shall not be able to keep our mind strong and clear." Science affirms this truth. Physical movement stimulates blood flow, supports neuroplasticity, and boosts the creation of new neural connections, literally rebuilding the architecture of the mind. But for Linda, this was more than biology. It was liberation. Each walk became a kind of walking meditation. Not a race, not a workout, but a quiet rebellion against decay. A vow to stay alive, in motion, in spirit, in presence. One morning, as she and Emily walked beneath a canopy of turning leaves, Linda paused. She closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and whispered, "I'm still here, and I'm still me." Because movement wasn't about how far she could go. It was about remembering she could go. That every step was a step toward herself. And so she walked, not to escape aging, but to meet it, fully awake. Habit 5. Daily challenges, training the mind like a muscle. The mind, like the body, responds to what we give it. Neglect it and it stiffens. Challenge it and it grows. Linda had always considered herself sharp. But over the years, as routines replaced curiosity, something in her began to dim, not only her memory, but her spark. That's when her son handed her a small brown package. Inside, a puzzle book, crosswords, logic games, riddles. Simple? Maybe. But for Linda, it felt foreign. She hadn't flexed her cognitive muscles in a long time. That night, with a cup of tea and cautious curiosity, she opened the book. The first crossword stared back, blank and defiant. She frowned. The words didn't come easily. Frustration bubbled. But then came a pause and a breath. Hadn't she always told her children to be patient with themselves? Wasn't now the perfect moment to offer herself the same grace? She picked up her pen and tried again. A few letters clicked into place. Then a word. And just like that, the fog lifted, ever so slightly. The next day, she reached for the book again. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Soon, puzzles became part of her mornings. Logic games with her tea. Sudokus after dinner. She even started borrowing books on astronomy and history, topics she'd never explored before. One afternoon, she decided to learn French. A new language meant new neural pathways. The first phrases were clumsy, awkward. But slowly they began to stick. Bonjour. Comment cava? Words once foreign now danced on her tongue like old friends. Buddhism teaches, what you water grows, what you neglect withers. Linda saw this unfold daily, not just in memory, but in joy. Her thoughts became quicker, her recall sharper, her confidence bloomed. Science calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's capacity to rewire itself, to grow and adapt at any age. But Linda didn't need a textbook. She had proof in every puzzle solved, every word remembered, every game of chess with her granddaughter that stretched her mind and their bond. And then came the day she won. Grandma, Emily gasped, "You beat me." Linda laughed, eyes sparkling. "I guess I did." But the real victory wasn't on the chessboard. It was in the quiet knowing that her mind was not slipping away. It was waking up. Every challenge became a whisper. You're still learning. You're still growing. You're still alive. And so she kept going. One page, one phrase, one discovery at a time. Habit 6. Gratitude and faith, the final, most powerful habit. For all the golden tonics, walks in the sun, songs that stirred memory, and puzzles that reawakened clarity, there was still one thing that tied it all together. Something softer than science, deeper than practice, and more powerful than any habit. It was gratitude, and it began with just a whisper. Each night, before sleep, Linda placed her hand on her chest and said quietly, "Thank you for today. I'm here. I am grateful." At first, it felt mechanical, a bedtime ritual meant to calm her racing thoughts. But soon, it became something else. Because the more she gave thanks, the more she noticed the miracle of warm socks from the dryer, the joy in her granddaughter's laugh, the beauty of autumn leaves dancing across the sidewalk. She realized it wasn't her memory that had failed her. It was her attention. And gratitude brought her back. Science confirms what ancient teachings have long known. Gratitude reduces stress, enhances cognitive function, and strengthens the neural pathways of optimism and resilience. But Buddhist wisdom goes even further. Let go or be dragged. Linda had spent so many months fighting to reclaim what she feared was slipping away. Now, she saw that gratitude wasn't resistance. It was release. And with that release came faith. Not in religion, necessarily, but in rhythm, in presence, in something larger than her, yet somehow within her. She began each day with stillness, eyes closed, breath slow, hands open. Not to pray for something, but to simply be with what already was. And some days, when fear tried to creep back in, the fear of forgetting, of aging, of losing, she turned to a tree in the park. A great oak that had stood there for decades. Weathered, rooted, unmoved by storms. She would rest her palm against its bark and think, I too can remain. Gratitude became her anchor, faith her compass, and the journal she kept, once blank and hesitant, now overflowed with quiet moments. A smile from a stranger, a word remembered, a step taken with ease, a memory returned like a gift. In the end, Linda understood something most never dare to believe. Memory fades. Youth fades. But gratitude? That is eternal. Because gratitude doesn't just help you remember. It helps you be here. Fully. Gently. Powerfully. And so every night as she closed her eyes and whispered that familiar prayer, she wasn't just thankful for the day. She was thankful for herself, for choosing presence, choosing peace, choosing to return to what had always been waiting within her. Linda's story is not extraordinary. It is deeply human. She did not seek to reverse time or deny aging. She simply chose to be awake, awake to her breath, her steps, her food, her songs, her thoughts, and most of all, her heart. And in that choice, she reclaimed something far greater than memory. She reclaimed herself. The 6 habits that transformed her life: grounding, mindful eating, music, movement, mental challenge, and gratitude, are not quick fixes or life hacks. They are quiet invitations. Each one, a thread pulling us back to presence. Because your mind is not something to fear losing. It is something to tend to, like a garden. And every thought, every practice, every moment of awareness is a seed. The Buddha once said, "Happiness does not depend on what you have or who you are. It solely relies on what you think." So what if you began today? Not by doing everything, but by doing something. One barefoot step on the grass. One song from your youth played with intention. One puzzle solved with joy. One quiet thank you whispered into the dark. Transformation does not come with noise. It comes with noticing. Comes with choosing presence again and again. Your mind is still yours. Your clarity is not lost. It is waiting, beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the stories you've been told. So I ask you now, which seed will you plant today? Let us know in the comments. Share your story, your starting point, your first step. And if this video touched something in you, share it with someone you love. Because presence, like peace, multiplies when given away. Until next time, stay grounded, stay grateful, and keep your mind sharp.